Ryan hates that. Like, let's fucking go.
There we go. Pay heed, all who enter. Beware this live podcast for Kansas football defeating Iowa State here at Arrowhead Stadium. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. We are going to break it all down. Coming up next.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
This is a live edition of the Paid Podcast from the Arrowhead Press Box. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're joining us live, drop a comment, drop a like in the YouTube live chat. We'll interact and talk about it as well as we talk through this game. Kansas gets a big victory over Iowa State. We're going to talk about all of that here on the show. As always, brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. Kansas gets a big win. They are now 3-6, 2-3 in conference play. They defeat Iowa State here at Arrowhead Stadium. Kevin, what was your initial takeaways from what ended up being just kind of a wild game of all sorts of chaos in this one?
Yeah, I'm not sure any of us picked KU to win in an absolute shootout, but it was kind of funny. You and I talked off air earlier this week. I talked to a couple coaches who were kind of familiar with Jeff Grimes' history against Iowa State, and they felt like that he would have a good game plan against Iowa State, that Kansas would be able to run the ball, and that certainly played out. Kansas had over 230 yards rushing, but, Nick, I think the thing that maybe I didn't see happening was Kansas pairing that and being able to run the ball so effectively while also throwing for almost 300 yards and so many yards of completion. Devin Neal setting
Phenomenal.
About 8 billion records today, including the big one, I think, in terms of topping June Henley on Kansas's career rushing records chart. What kind of stood out to you about this one?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. Devin Neal was phenomenal, obviously. Jalen Daniels, again, played a really great game. And then my biggest takeaway actually was Quentin Skinner.
Oh, yeah,
Quentin
he was
Skinner
great.
Has been really up and down this year. Obviously had some key drops in some different moments this season. And for him to step up and have a game like this, really breaking out, I'm hoping that kind of puts him in position to ignite a spark for the rest of the season, because he really is that guy that KU needs to be that deep threat, to be that guy that can take the top off of the defense. And tonight he was fantastic for KU, which was a big takeaway for me. Defensively, up and down, right? I mean,
some great moments.
Exactly. Yes.
Some really poor moments.
Yeah, I mean, the opening drive to the first 5 minutes of the game went about as poorly as I think you can ask for KU on both sides of the ball. You know, they started with the drive, and it's 3rd and 11 near midfield. They end up running it, get a decent gain out of it, but still decide to punt, which was a bit bizarre. Like, if you're going to run on 3rd down, I would think that means you're going to try to get, 5 or 6 yards, which they did, and then go for it on 4th and 5. Well, instead, they just did that and punted instead. So, and then, of course, Iowa State goes 99 yards for a touchdown, and you're thinking, in
7 plays. Yeah. And it felt like Kansas's defense at that point was really on the back foot, and it felt like Iowa State was getting everything it wanted. It was the first drive. I get first drives are scripted, but even so, you're sitting here thinking, I think one of the things we talked about was the importance of Kansas getting off to a good start. Kansas did the exact opposite of that and wound up down 7-0 really fast.
Yeah, but a really great response by Kansas also to come back and bounce back quickly after that sort of slow start to the game, in which they responded with a big touchdown, 70 yards to Luke Grimm, right? A quick counter punch right back against Iowa State. And by the way, that pass was incredible from Jalen Daniels.
Yes.
It was a very, very tight window. There was a backside Iowa State defender that was probably about a millisecond away from getting a fingertip on it or possibly even intercepting it if he was a little quicker. And instead, it's a 70-yard touchdown to Luke Grimm that got Kansas on track early in this game after the tough start, with not going for it on 4th down after running on 3rd and 11, and then the 99-yard drive by Iowa State. But a quick response. And then from there, what was really impressive to me, Kevin, was the Kansas defense really turned it on after that for about 3 straight drives. Iowa State was really not able to do anything. For the next couple of drives that they had it, and Kansas was able to capitalize offensively too.
Yeah, I thought the defense played really, really well for a while in there, and that allowed Kansas to build the lead that ultimately kind of wound up they kept it sort of throughout. No, it wasn't always comfortable. It wasn't always in a spot, but Kansas, I think the smallest lead that they had wound up being that 9-point lead at the end after they built that initial sort of 28-10, I think it was. And so, yeah, the offense was terrific, but Nick, without the defense sort of stacking stops, and they were able to get some pressure. They had some good pass defense down the field as well. And then you look at what they did against the run. They wound up busting on a couple run plays, but overall, I thought they were pretty solid in that phase of the game.
Shout out to D Jones in the YouTube live chat. Rock Chalk, Kansas gets a big win. Live here from Arrowhead Stadium with Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. And yeah, the thing I want to talk about really here, Kevin, is the play calling. I thought initially after being not great to begin with, I obviously have advocated time and time again throughout the season for more triple option, more speed option, more utilizing Jalen's legs. And Kansas absolutely leaned into that in a big way in this game. Jalen was outstanding on the ground. They went to the triple option look multiple times. They went to the triple option where they would end up throwing it with Jalen Daniels. Jalen finished with 68 yards rushing plus a touchdown. He was making the right reads generally besides the last pitch at the end of the game where he pitched it to nobody and Luke Grimm had to fall on it. Beyond that, the triple option and the option plays I thought worked to perfection. Kansas was running them to the wide side of the field, which allowed Devin Neal to stretch things out if he got the ball off of a pitch from Jalen Daniels. So I thought the use of the option and the use of Jalen's legs was outstanding in this game for KU, and I really, really hope they continue to do that down the stretch because I don't know if early in the season maybe there was some listen, outwardly coaches can say whatever they want. Oh, we don't care about injury, whatever. But I still wonder if very early in the year there was still some trepidation about Jalen possibly getting injured again. And maybe that's why they didn't go to it very often earlier in the year. But I love it. I think it's outstanding. Jalen is great at running it. Obviously, Devin Neal is electric anytime you get him the ball. And then utilizing that with some triple option as well with Luke Grimm. And then we saw it in this game. There was also a nice wheel route off of a triple option kind of play action that led to a big play for Devin Neal as well. So I thought all of that was really, really great. And I really hope KU continues to incorporate it because I think it's so tough to defend because Jalen obviously has proven that he is an elite runner with the football. Then you add in Devin Neal, and then you add in all of the different things and wrinkles that KU can do off of that. I really hope they keep utilizing that down the stretch.
Yeah, look, the strength of Kansas is its physical run game. I think there are multiple reasons for that. One, to your point, Jalen Daniels is not just a great runner, but as we've talked about, he has an aptitude as an option quarterback as well. He's able to read things and see either the cut or the pitch when it needs to be made. Obviously, Devin Neal, Daniel Highshaw, really good running backs. The other thing that I'm hoping gets discussed a lot about this game, and we'll talk about it right here. Nick, I thought the offensive line was tremendous. And against an Iowa State defense that typically does not get pushed around very often. And that's the thing about this. Some people may look at it and say, oh, my gosh, that was a great offensive day. Nick, this was an excellent offensive day against perhaps the best defense in the Big 12.
Yeah, especially pass defense.
Yes.
This Iowa State pass defense had been first in the Big 12 in a lot of stats, and that didn't matter today.
Yeah, and Kansas did a great job of using the things you were talking about in the running game to set up vertical shots. And I think that if you're looking for something from this game to carry forward in a positive way, I think that's it, right? Like that's the formula, the winning sauce, the secret sauce, however you want to put it, is that running game is so tough to stop because it's so multifaceted and all the different things they can do. And then the second you try to put somebody extra in the box, they've got guys that can get over the top. And Jalen right now is playing with a level of polish that he just wasn't playing with to start the year. To your point about them not using him as a runner, you bring up a great point. Whatever you want to say about, oh, yeah, we felt great about him, they didn't know. He's not getting a hit in practice. He didn't carry the ball once against Lindenwood. And I get that it's Lindenwood, but still, it wasn't like his legs were a big part of the game against Illinois either. I think it was something where they had to kind of grow into it a little bit. But right now, Nick, I think they've found a really nice balance between, hey, let's get the ball to Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw while also taking advantage of the fact that you've got Jalen Daniels there who can pull the ball, who can do things off of play fakes. And even when they do hand the ball off, the defense has to respect the fact that he could pull it.
Yeah, and listen, Daniel Highshaw coming back certainly can't be understated, right? I think when you look at the way KU ran the ball in this game, 18 carries for Devin Neal, 12 for Jalen Daniels, 12 more for Daniel Highshaw. I think that's probably the ratio that KU wants in this particular case, right? You want Devin Neal to be getting his touches, but having not to rely on him too much to have him wear down over the course of the game. That's where you bring in Daniel Highshaw. And I mentioned this. The reality is it's pretty clear that beyond those two guys, Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, KU does not have a lot of trust in their next level of running backs, guys like Savion Morrison, obviously Eric Stewart's a true freshman, and then like a Johnny Thompson type. The trust level is just not there for those guys. So having Daniel Highshaw back is significant, obviously. And we even saw a wrinkle with Torrey Loughlin getting the ball on a reverse as well. And then
a pass down the field, too.
Yes.
Torrey Loughlin.
Yeah, listen, I tweeted about this, but I do not want to be in the Iowa State defensive backs film room on Monday. I mean, they had so many busted coverages, just blown aside. Like KU obviously capitalized on pretty much all of them. But for Iowa State, man, I mean, just busted coverage left and right. You had the wide open cornerback blitz where nobody even decided to cover Quentin Skinner on the touchdown in the first half. The Torrey Loughlin play, Leighton Keir got wide open on a play that unfortunately was dropped, but just the coverage or lack thereof from Iowa State was actually unbelievable at times. I did want to throw in one more point here about the run game as well.
Yeah.
When you play a style of defense like Iowa State, the objective for Iowa State with that three-man front is to just eat up all those blocks with those three guys. And I think the difference really for KU running the ball this time around versus maybe previous iterations of KU against Iowa State is Bryce Foster.
Yeah.
Bryce Foster is a bruiser. He is a mover. He is a battering ram. He is somebody that can snap and fire off the ball and move people. And it's not a knock against Dirk Nowitzki that they had previously. I call him Dirk. Mike Nowitzki, who they had previously, whose nickname was Dirk for obvious reasons. He just wasn't necessarily that style of center, that style of guy. I think with Bryce Foster, this is a game where you really see the type of impact that he can have because he is that type of player at 6'5", 320 pounds, where he has the ability to just move a nose tackle off right in front of him. And I think that was part of the success that KU had today.
Yeah, you don't see a lot of centers like Bryce Foster, period, but you really don't see him in the Big 12, right? Yeah. Like that's not really the way that the Big 12 teams are built. And I do think you saw a lot of that benefit. And to your point, that's exactly what Iowa State wants to do. They want to eat up your 5 offensive linemen with their 3 defensive linemen, which allows the second level, the third level guys, because they play 3 safeties, to spill to the ball and really get downhill. Another thing I thought that they did really well was they attacked the edges of that defense really well too, where it wasn't just a straight run up the middle at these 3 guys, but making them move side to side and getting to the angles. I thought they did that really well in the run game. It was really impressive to watch.
If you're joining us live, don't forget to drop a comment and leave a like. Subscribe as well here on YouTube. We're at Arrowhead Stadium along with Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer, talking all things KU football after a big win here this afternoon at Arrowhead Stadium. We're going to be talking more KU football coming up next. Do want to take a quick break here and remind you also, as always, that you can shop home field apparel at homefieldapparel.com. I mean, I can't think of a better time to wear home field apparel after a big Kansas victory. So wear that home field apparel proudly. And if you don't have any, we got you covered. You can head to homefieldapparel.com and use the promo code PAYHEAT24 for 15% off of your first order. The weather's getting a little bit colder. It's getting a little chillier. They've got some excellent options with jackets, long sleeves, and sweaters, and plenty more over there at homefieldapparel.com. So be sure to check that out, and we'll be right back with more KU football talk coming up.
Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
This is the Paid Podcast, a live edition from the Arrowhead Stadium press box after a big win for Kansas over Iowa State, 45-36. I'm Nick Springer. I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. If you're joining us live on YouTube, be sure to drop a comment and like and subscribe as well on YouTube. If you're listening on the audio side as well, you can leave a 5-star rating and review also as Kansas gets a big victory over Iowa State. Unfortunately, Kevin, this doesn't count as a one-score victory for Kansas. So KU still is winless in one-score games technically, after a 9-point win over Iowa State in this one. One other thing I wanted to mention here is what Iowa State did before halftime.
Yeah.
Iowa State's got the ball. I just need to riff on this for a minute. Iowa State goes down, and there's like 20 seconds left in the half. Rocco Beck scrambles and goes down, and it was so bad that I just assumed Iowa State must have been out of timeouts, but they still had one left somehow. But instead of calling it, they like sprint to the line, they scramble, and it's like chaotic. They miraculously sort of lucked their way into a pass complete out of bounds to kick a field goal. But it was a mind-numbing sequence from Matt Campbell and Iowa State.
Not well handled. And to your point about close games, we always joke around that the best way to win a close game, not play a close game. And so one-score game, I should say, the best way to win a one-score game is to not play a one-score game.
Yeah.
And Kansas didn't play a one-score game, Nick, although it started to look in the second half, and we're getting there at times like, hey, this may become a one-score game, getting a little hot under the collar at times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to give a shout-out to Tabor Allen for making a 47-yard field goal, but then, unfortunately, he ends up missing a field goal later
You still got to give him the shout-out for the
field
goal.
That was a season long for him, hitting a 47-yarder. So Kansas goes into the half up 31-13, and at this point, you're feeling pretty good, right? For the first time, really, Kansas didn't struggle too much at the end of the half. I mean, again, Iowa State really lucked into the points they got. Like, Iowa State really botched that pretty badly. So they didn't really fumble too badly at the end of the first half. You go to the start of the second half, 31-13. Iowa State gets the ball first. And this was a play that you highlighted, Kevin. On 4th and 1 in Kansas territory, J.B. Brown makes an incredible play.
Yeah, it was a terrific play that required athleticism, strength, and more than that, just sheer effort. I mean, he bounces off a block from the offensive lineman, bounces off the lead blocker, and then absolutely stones the running back short of the first down. And that was huge because you think about the way Iowa State ended the half, albeit with a field goal. If Iowa State had gone down and scored a touchdown there, I think that things could have gotten a little bit more heated. Instead, you have J.B. Brown make that play. It was a terrific play, and the sort of thing that I think Kansas is probably going to circle in film review and say that is what we want to see from our linebackers. It was a terrific play and potentially even a game-changing one with how close things wound up getting later.
Yeah, because look, there wasn't – I mean, we'll get to it in a little bit, but for the majority of the game, vast majority of the game, there were no turnovers.
Yeah.
Neither team really turned the ball over throughout the entire game. And so when that doesn't happen, these fourth down plays take on even more significance because it essentially is a turnover, right? Like it acts as a turnover in this particular case for Kansas to get off the field. And that then led Kansas to going down to score another touchdown to really put some gap between them and Iowa State. I mean, dude, sometimes it just looks too easy for Devin Neal. Like, I don't even know how else to explain it. It just sometimes just his running style. It's so fluid. It looks so effortless at times. It's truly remarkable. And the touchdown that he scored there to make it 38-20 was really, I thought, sort of encapsulated that idea of just like him just sort of he takes the ball and just casually runs, and then just all of a sudden he's untouched and he's in the end zone. It's unbelievable to watch him run the ball sometimes.
It's that Midwestern thing, right? Like the let me scooch right by you. It's almost polite, like in terms of the way that he does it. But yeah, I mean he always has this innate feel for the cut that needs to be made, and it's fascinating because obviously he's been terrific across his whole career, Nick, and he set the Kansas rushing record on the very first carry. He didn't.
Which, by the way, he nearly scored a touchdown.
Did not leave us waiting long on that one. But I think one of the things that's so great to see with Devin Neal is he wasn't like this as a freshman. I'm not saying he wasn't good. He was very good as a freshman. He was very good as a sophomore. But I thought between his sophomore and junior years, if you talk to NFL scouts between those years, they were kind of like, well, we think Devin may be an NFL running back, but we're not entirely sure because there may be a little bit of stiffness there, right? Like he wasn't showing that agility that they wanted to see. And then he came out as a junior and showed it all over the place, and you've just seen it even more as a senior. And so I think it's a testament not just to how good Devin is, but I think how hard he worked to get to that point that you almost never see the first guy take him down, at least at initial contact. Maybe somebody gets him down, but he's going to get an extra 3 or 4 yards after that. And quite frankly, I think Jalen Daniels has gotten really good at not letting that first guy make a play on him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was utterly outstanding. As we ever, our camera seems to be out of focus here. That's a bit important. There we go. Yeah, he was utterly outstanding. 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. Really, really great run.
Yeah,
great running overall for him in the game. And then we get later into the third quarter and early in the fourth quarter, and this is where things start to get a little hairy. Kansas up 38-20. They go down and have a 4th down in Iowa State territory.
Yeah,
and I think it's 4th and 5, 4th and 6 from about the 37-yard line for Iowa State, and ultimately opt to punt.
Yep. Yeah, there's the punt. There was the field goal attempt on, I think, 4th
that's
and
what
1.
it was. Yeah.
The 4th and 1 field goal attempt. And look, a lot of times you're going to see this stuff, and there's going to be second guessing after the fact. Before Tabor Allen kicked that ball, everybody in the press box was like, why are they kicking it here? and then when Tabor Allen missed the field goal, it was it felt like one of those things, not necessarily like, oh, Iowa State's going to come back, but it did feel like cracking the door a little bit, and Iowa State took advantage.
It's one of those things where it's like play stupid games, win stupid prizes sometimes, right? Like, I mean, you're averaging over 6 yards per carry at that point in the game.
Your offensive line's moving people around.
4th and 1.
Your option game has even been effective to the point that you don't necessarily just need to hand the ball up the middle. You can add in a little something to try and fool the defense or get yourself into an advantageous position. I really would have liked their odds to convert the 4th down. Like I said, it wasn't the sort of thing where after Tabor Allen missed it, everybody was like, man, that was something that they should have done differently. It was before he kicked it. And I think that was, one of those decisions. You look at the thing that you talked about earlier in the game on that first drive with punting it there. You look at some decisions later as well. A couple of those felt pretty conservative, and I get that you're playing with a lead, but I also think that potentially the reason that people were sweating under the collar a little bit was because of some of those decisions that kind of left the door open for Iowa State a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's just this. It's just you just have to accept that's who Lance Leipold is as a coach. Like, there's been numerous situations over the course of the last 3 seasons where he has proven that that's just how he chooses to coach. He chooses to coach in a more of a conservative manner. And then this particular iteration of Kansas, and really over the past couple seasons, when you have an offense that is so explosive, that can be so dynamic, and you have a defense that struggles at times, you would think that would lead to wanting to be more aggressive. Sure. And Lance Leipold, in classic Lance Leipold fashion, he will stay true to his principles. He will stay true to his beliefs. He will stay true to whatever his process is. And sometimes I think it's to a fault. And in this case, in this game, there were some decisions where, it was more on the conservative side. Luckily for Kansas, it didn't really come back to bite them too much in this particular game. Yeah. But you missed that 4th and 1 field goal. The momentum switches back to Iowa State. And again, they're able to go out and score pretty quickly after that to make it 38-28. And then, of course, Kansas has to punt again. And the play of the game probably then happens at that point in the fourth quarter for Kansas with Mello Dotson getting the interception.
Yeah, getting the interception and then taking it back to the house. Second year in a row for Mello, right, where he took back a pick 6 against Iowa State. And it was a huge play. It was kind of funny. I was talking to the Fogs, Jack Ritter, right before that happened and said, if Kobe and Mello are ever going to Kobe and Mello for a play, it needs to be right here. And that wound up being the pick 6 that kind of really, to Derek's point, stopped Iowa State in its tracks. And that was the thing that kept it from it. And I'm not saying Iowa State didn't have a chance at the end or whatever, but if Iowa State had gone down and scored there, everybody in this stadium is nervous, and instead you get points from your defense. That was a huge play.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely feel the sense of unease
Yes.
slowly but surely rising among the crowd, among the KU fans, certainly at Arrowhead Stadium. Sort of as that whole sequence of events unfolded, you don't go for it on fourth down. You miss the field goal. Iowa State goes and scores. Then they get the ball back. It's 38-28. In the fourth quarter, the sense of unease had clearly risen and was on the rise, and that broke it obviously with the play by Mello Dotson. Mello was great all game today. I mean, Iowa State ended up being very successful, throwing for over 380 yards. They got some deep plays, but Mello specifically played really, really well. He didn't really give up too much.
Yeah, I thought so. And it was weird to what we were talking about earlier, because the defense played really well for stretches. And then when Kansas had the lead, they would give up just a really quick touchdown drive.
Yeah.
The sort of thing where it's like, look, you can get away with potentially giving up points here if you make Iowa State grind and take their time. You just can't give up those sorts of explosives. And that's where a soft defense, at least theoretically, is supposed to help you, is to make them work to get down the field. That didn't happen. And I don't know if it's the sort of thing where Kansas is playing too soft, if they're just not good at executing in those situations. But, Nick, I think with the way this year has gone, KU pretty much needs to take its prevent defense and throw it in the trash and come up with something new. Because I think that when they're sending pressure, when they're doing different things like that, theoretically that has more risk. But I feel like for this KU team, we've seen it's when the defense gets conservative that they actually have their biggest risk.
Yeah, well, and look, earlier in the game, there was a 3rd and long in the first half where KU decided to blitz, and Iowa State perfectly executed a screen pass for a first down. And it felt like that play then dictated that Brian Bolin was not going to blitz very much the rest of the game after that. Like he became very scared, I think, to blitz after that, after Iowa State sort of got him with that screen pass earlier in the game. And so then KU did sort of sit back quite a bit. Yeah. And Devin Dye got burned for a touchdown at one point for Iowa State earlier in the game. Kobe at times was successful, but at times struggled.
Yep.
Certainly the top 2 receivers for Iowa State got theirs with Higgins and Noel.
I did think it was really cool, though, KU's 2 young safeties, Caleb Purdy and Taylor Davis.
Caleb Purdy had a great game.
Each had a great play on a deep throw where they covered it pretty well, wound up, not allowing a deep completion. Those guys are kind of growing up right in front of our eyes. And when you look at what Kansas is set to lose in that safety room after this season, that's a good sign.
Yeah, and I mean, then you think about another guy like Jalen Todd, who we didn't really see much of in this game, but you throw him in there as well in the secondary for Kansas. So the KU secondary, I think, is in good hands going forward, hopefully, in this game. And
shout out Ron McGee for getting a sack too.
Yeah. Caleb Taylor got in there for a sack as well.
Dean Miller on one of the plays that they sent pressure. They kind of bent the defensive line on one side, sent a linebacker kind of right behind those guys. And so the offensive line shifted to pick it up, which meant nobody blocked Dean Miller. And that's one of the things about pressure. I think a lot of people think that when you blitz a linebacker, you're expecting the linebacker to get home. A lot of times it opens up things for the other people there.
Yeah.
And in that instance, it led to an unblocked Dean Miller getting a sack.
Yeah, if I had to give any gripes with Grimes on the offensive side, I would say this. In the second half especially, you're averaging 6 yards a carry. It felt like KU was still taking a lot of deep shots in the second half. And I would have liked – I mean, the one aspect of this, especially late in the game, that I really wanted to dive into here is Kansas gets the ball with about 4 minutes left.
Okay?
4 minutes left in the game. They get the ball. And it's one of the situations where it's like, okay, you should be able to then run the clock out, right? Execute a 4-minute offense. You pick up 2 or 3 first downs, game's done, right? No issues. Instead, what happens? You get 2 run plays that don't work, a triple option play that doesn't work, and you punt, and Iowa State scores in 40 seconds, and all of a sudden the game becomes a little bit sweatier. So that is what I would like to see more of. Obviously, it's sort of beating a dead horse in terms of the concept of end of game situations and end of half situations, because it's another one where I think it failed there. But to me, like, the offense was great. They were throwing the ball over the place. Jalen Daniels was phenomenal. The run game worked. But once again, you had a chance, and this is why KU has lost some games earlier in the year. You had a chance to basically just try to execute a 4-minute offense to put the game away, and you couldn't do it. And Iowa State goes and scores immediately. right afterwards. So that's an area where I definitely want to see improvement.
Yeah, I agree. I think with how effective the offensive line was, and we talked about that earlier, I think that's a situation where you want to be able to lean on those guys and be able to say, hey, you've been moving people for the first 3.5 quarters, go
get three first downs.
Go move the ball and run it out. And it's funny because before the year even started, we did our retrospective where we looked back at all of the games from a year ago. And it was kind of a fun project to rewatch all of those games. But one of the things that I think that KU did pretty well last year was they executed in those situations.
Yep.
And you look at where Kansas has struggled at times this year, that's been part of the problem, right? If you run a better quote-unquote 4-minute offense against Kansas State, you win that game. If you run a better 4-minute offense against West Virginia, you win that game.
Against Illinois.
And so it's one, that's something that has proven to be an issue. And I'm not entirely sure why. I know some people would say, hey, I don't love the situational play calling. But the thing is like there's similar play calls to what they had last year. They just executed it better. And there's similar play calls to what you executed earlier in the game and were able to move the ball. And so I do think I agree with you. The 4-minute offense does need to get better. I thought Grimes called a great game overall. I also thought the passing stuff was really good. I mean, he had open receivers all over the place. To your point, you were talking about busts. I mean, it was Iowa State had busts all over the place. Jalen Daniels threw for 295. He might have been able to throw for 400. Left a touchdown pass to Luke Graham, I think a little bit short, that wound up getting broken up over there. He had a long pass to Leighton Cure that you mentioned that wound up getting dropped. There were a couple other instances too where I think they had guys there to where he could have had an even bigger passing game than he did. I thought the passing game was really well called, and they were able to connect with a number of different guys too, and guys down the field. But I thought you got a great point earlier about the passing game, and that when Quentin Skinner is getting open downfield and making the plays that he is downfield, I really think it opens everything else up. And I do think earlier this season, we talked about Jalen Daniels being rusty, not having a level of polish. You really noticed how much he struggled to throw the ball over the middle of the field. I mean, it was something that announcers were ringing up on broadcasts hey, this guy does not want to throw the ball over the middle of the field. And I think that one of the things that being able to connect with Skinner down the field has done is it's taken the top off the defense a little bit, where now you're seeing Jalen make those throws over the middle of the field and connect on those a lot more.
Yeah, I think the bottom line for the offense is, Kevin, this is, I think, what a lot of KU fans were expecting the offense to be in week 2 or week 3.
Yeah.
And, on one hand, unfortunately, it's taken a lot of time for KU to get here. But on the other hand, they have gotten here, right? Like, we've seen these guys bounce back. And I think if there's one thing that Lance Leipold really continues to be praised about is every week he has come in and sat down and said the locker room is, holding strong, right?
Yep.
These guys still believe in each other. They still, we're still committed to everything. And obviously the results haven't quite been there, but clearly what Lance Leipold is saying is true, right? I mean, we're seeing it in real time that this team is not quitting. These guys are continuing to play. These guys are continuing to try to execute what they want to do. And it's taken a little over half the season, but this level of offense is really, really exciting to watch regardless, even if it took more time than we were hoping, whether it was Jalen being rusty, Jeff Grimes coming in and wanting to insert more of what his style wants to be. Whatever all that was, today was sort of the peak of that, right?
Yeah.
Which was awesome, which is great to see for KU, and obviously getting a big win against a top 20 Iowa State team.
Yeah, and let's not sleep on the fact, we talked about on the show this week, Kansas coming off of bye weeks, and that's something that this Leipold staff does incredibly well. The players look really fresh coming off of bye weeks. They play fast. They usually have a really good game plan. Over the last 3 years now, Nick, they're 4-0 coming off of bye weeks with 2 wins over ranked teams because they upset Oklahoma last year coming off of a bye week. And so 2 of those wins are over ranked teams. And so I think they came out with a great game plan in this one. to your point, I mean, there's going to be people frustrated that the offense hasn't looked like this all year long. Another kind of check mark that I put in Grimes' column, though, is if you look at the offense today and you look at what they were running earlier in the season, it's not the same stuff. And to me, that's encouraging moving forward in that he's shown himself to be adaptable, right?
Yeah.
Because part of what goes into being an offensive coordinator is calling what you know and calling, hey, this is the system that I am good at calling. Another part is seeing what your players are good at executing. And when you look at the way that Kansas was throwing, RPO bubble screens all the time earlier in the year, the lack of a quarterback running game, like we were talking about, it feels like the offense has grown each week. And don't get me wrong, I'm surprised. I'm not going to say I'm not surprised. I did not expect Kansas to put up 532 yards of offense on maybe the Big 12's best defense. But what I will say is that this is sort of something that has been building. When you look at what they were able to do offensively, they had plays there but didn't execute necessarily against TCU. The week before that against West Virginia, there was some positive stuff there.
Houston game, obviously.
Yeah, the Houston game was a breakout. And then against K-State, K-State's defense is pretty good. And they did some great things offensively in that one as well. And so this has sort of been building little by little, week by week. And I think that coming off of the second bye week, this is about as good an offensive performance as you could ask for.
Yeah, 45-36, Kansas gets the win. You highlighted it with the 532 yards of offense, 295 for Jalen.
Yep.
Obviously, the run game was great as well for Kansas.
Another 68 for Jalen on the ground.
Yeah. Now, the bad news, or I guess not really bad news, but the bad news here is you benefited K-State by beating Iowa State. So that's a little unfortunate. But then Kansas now 3-6, and we talked about it earlier. But KU is they're halfway through this stretch now where they are going to be playing all four of the top four teams in the Big 12 back to back.
Yeah.
Obviously, you played well enough to beat K-State in Manhattan. Probably should have won, but you end up losing. You looked really, really good here today against Iowa State. You're going to go play at BYU, and then you get Colorado as well coming up. So the road to a potential bowl game for Kansas it's possible. It's not going to get any easier. I mean, I can't reiterate this enough that Kansas on paper is absolutely good enough to compete with all three of these next teams that are left on their schedule in BYU, Baylor, and Colorado, right? The question is, if there's close games, can Kansas find a way to win those? In this game, it was getting close. Kansas got a big play from their defense to sort of help, ice the game away. We'll see how that continues to unfold through the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if I were a betting man, I would not necessarily put down my mortgage on them going to a bowl game. But to your point, if they play the way that they did, and here's the thing, I get that they lost at the very end to Kansas State. And I think that one of the downsides to that was people looked at it as like, oh no, here we go again, same old thing. Look, Nick, if they had played the way they played against K-State, against Illinois, UNLV, and West Virginia,
they would have won all those games.
They would have won all those games, and probably all of them by double digits. And so I think that's the thing to watch right now is the fact that over the last 2 weeks, if Kansas brings that forward, if Kansas plays its K-State game and tonight's game against Iowa State against any of those remaining teams, they have a great chance to win. Yeah. They can beat any of those teams. And so it goes – obviously, it's one game at a time, that whole how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. But this is a team that has that kind of potential, I do think.
Yeah, and Derek Ho in the comments, only one road to a bowl game. He's right. It's to win out. You got to win your last 3 games. Yeah. And obviously going on the road at BYU is going to be very, very tough to do. We'll see how BYU fares. They're playing tonight against Utah in the Holy War, so we'll see how that goes for BYU.
And weird stuff happens late at night out on the West Coast.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, it's going to be not Pac-12 after dark, not Mountain West after dark.
Yep.
But Big 12 after dark.
Big 12 after dark.
Next week with KU and BYU. So Kevin, before we get out of here, you got any final thoughts from the game today?
No, it was a terrific win. It was one that both of us predicted Kansas to get, albeit not in this fashion at all. Though we both thought, hey, it's probably going to be a defensive slugfest. Maybe KU wins this thing 24-21, 27-24. It was not that.
Yeah.
Both teams had big offensive days. Kansas with a bigger offensive day. It's funny. Iowa State put up 7.4 yards per play and lost.
Yeah.
And so I do think great win for Kansas, great showing for the offense, some great things for the defense when you look at some of those possessions, and then ultimately, getting the pick six when it sort of mattered most. Defense has some things to clean up, but ultimately you're not going to look a ranked win in the mouth, especially with the way that this year's gone.
Yeah, offense was great. Defense was up and down. Special teams was up and down. But overall, like you said, you're not going to be too upset about a big win like this at home, Arrowhead Stadium.
Yes.
Playing up with the Chiefs logos.
With the Chiefs logos and both sets of – by the way, if you can't see, obviously, if you're not here, but they had both sets of hashes, the college hashes outside – of the other hashes, and they have all deleted almost all of the college hashes here, going over the top of them. So the NFL hashes are about all that's left at this point.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe the power of the Chiefs logo helped to get you.
If you're Lance Leipold and you're superstitious, you at least think about saying, "Hey, let's talk about potentially having that Arrowhead at midfield again," because that worked out for him.
Oh, man. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. That's about going to wrap it up here for our live reaction post-game here from Arrowhead Stadium. If you liked what you were watching, if you joined us on YouTube, shout out to Derek and D. Jones in the comments as well here tonight. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Be sure to drop a like. You can also drop a comment after the fact as well. If you're listening on the audio platform, after the fact, you can also leave us a 5-star rating and review. You can find us on social media at Springer29, at Flaherty, KCSN. If you want to tweet at us and get involved in the conversation, lots of ways to join the conversation. As KU has improved to 3-6. And, they will be playing a late night game like we alluded to against BYU, a 9:15 kick coming up next Saturday against BYU. So it's going to be a late one. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know what I'm going to do. I might have to take a nap. I don't normally take naps either, but we'll see how to stay awake for that one. The Nevada game from 2 years ago prepared me for this. So I guess from last year, the Nevada game.
I had pushed that one to the back of the memory.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a game you want to remember.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the Nevada game is one I think you want to forget as quickly as possible. So KU BYU late kick coming up next Saturday. We're going to be talking more. We've got college basketball National Signing Day coming up later this week. We're going to have a couple of special guests actually on the show later on this week. So be sure to subscribe and like for all things KU content-wise here on KCSN and on the Paid Podcast. But until then, for Kevin Flaherty, I'm Nick Springer. We'll talk to you again soon. See ya.